Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our regularly scheduled City Council meeting for November 23rd, 2020. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. We will now start with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of tonight's agenda.
This is Krogman, so moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Krogman. Thank you, Councilmember Favalis. Any discussion? I just want to make sure that everybody understands that for item 6 alpha, everybody should have the electronic version of casat 22 improvement project 2020 Bravo bond sale. Does everybody have that?
Yes.
Looks like we all do. Okay, that being said, if we could go ahead and have a roll call vote, City Administrator Krugel, for the approval of tonight's agenda, please.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Favalis.
Aye.
Councilmember Huntington is absent tonight. Councilmember Kirby.
Aye.
Councilmember Krogman.
Aye.
Councilmember Schlueter.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Aye.
And Mayor Hague.
Aye. Consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine and been made available to the City Council at least 2 days in advance of the meeting. The items will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the agenda and considered a normal sequence. We have 3 items tonight on our consent agenda, and what we've all seen is that we're missing our minutes. Obviously, we don't have our minutes for both last meeting and also the meeting that we had a week ago Friday. That being said, tonight we have our disbursement approvals through November 23rd, 2020. Our lawful gambling exempt permit for the Sueur Chamber of Commerce, and our part-time police hire. Any questions regarding tonight's consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Schlueter, so moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Schlueter.
Favalis, second.
Thank you, Councilmember Favalis. Any final questions? Administrator Krugel, if you do the honors and do the vote for tonight's approval of our consent agenda items, please.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Favalis.
Aye.
Councilmember Kirby.
Aye.
Councilmember Krogman.
Aye.
Councilmember Schlueter.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Aye.
And Mayor Hague. Mayor Hague. All right, we'll give the mayor a second. He might be having some technical difficulties. Mayor Hague, can you still hear us? Thank you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to public comment. Public comment provides an opportunity for the public to address the council on items that are not on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes per person. Persons wishing to make a comment must sign up in advance of the meeting on a sheet provided and identify themselves by providing a name and address. Administrator Krugel, did we have anybody sign up prior to address council, or do we have anybody in the queue that would wish to address council?
Mayor Hague, nobody has signed up in advance, and I am not seeing any hands being raised from we do have 4 attendees tonight.
Okay. Well, with no hands raised, I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing or public comment.
So moved, Sullivan.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan.
Second, Krogman.
Thank you, Councilmember Krogman. Administrator Krugel, if you do the roll call vote to close public comment, please.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Favolis. Sorry, Councilmember Favolis.
Aye.
Councilmember Kirby.
Aye.
Councilmember Krogman.
Aye.
Councilmember Schleter.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Aye.
And Mayor Hague.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. We'll now move on to tonight's regular agenda. First item on the docket tonight is 6 Alpha, the casat 22 Improvement Project, the 2020 Bravo bond sale. Administrator Krugel.
Thank you, Mayor Hague, members of City Council. Before you tonight is an item that we've talked about for almost probably over a year about selling a bond for the project, the casat 22 Improvement Project. This will be the 2020 B bond sale. The 2020 A was for that electric bond that we did for related to the same project, but in the series that we go, ABC, this is the second one for the year. I did email out a revised resolution with the information included in it from the bids that we received. As a reminder, this is for the reconstruction of the casat 22 Improvement Project, which is a pretty big project that we're looking at. It was a total of, I believe, $16 million project. The road surface was completed along with the water, wastewater, electric, and stormwater lines. Again, that electric was separate on a separate bond. The overall project is a 2-year completion. One question that I did receive about the project and I guess the timing of the bond sale being after the project started. One thing we have to be aware of is arbitrage and following those laws and following guidance from finance director and our financial consultant, Shannon Sweeney. This was a good time to do so and sell this bond. And as you can see from the rate that we received, the interest rates were pretty good. We were estimating or projecting around a 1.6% interest rate, and we received a 1.1787% interest rate. So roughly those annual payments will be $410,000 per year for 15 years. Those are mostly, they're entirely covered by the utility payments, as this is mostly a utility related bond that we sold. So what we're looking at, we can have a discussion if you have questions about that, but what we're looking at is to consider resolution R 2020-033, award a bond sale to United Bankers Bank for the total principal amount of $5,590,000. That revised, as I mentioned, that revised resolution with all the data that we left out of the original in the packet filled in was emailed out to the City Council earlier today. So with that, I'll entertain any questions that City Council may have. And we also have Shannon Sweeney and Zach Dowd, Finance Director, on the line if there's anything that we need to have questions for.
This is Councilmember Krogman. I just have a quick question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm not sure if the mayor fell off or not. But yes, we can hear you.
Okay. What it appears, looking at the documentation, start off with a lower rate at 1%, then it escalates a little bit. So what we're seeing here, this is an average. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's what you're seeing at that 1.1787 is called the effective interest rate, and that's a culmination of how much interest you're going to pay over the life of the bond.
Okay, thank you.
So it does vary from year to year, correct?
Right. It gets, in later years, it increases, which we would expect.
Yep, and I will note that I believe, and Zach or Shannon, correct me, this bond is callable in 2028. that, which means that we have the option, if we want to, we can pay it off 2027. We have the option to pay that off at that time if we want to. So, and really our interest rate will be 1% until 2031.
Right.
So if we want to, and we have the opportunity to either refund or pay this off, let's say for some reason in 2027, the interest rates are lower, you know, and it makes sense for us to refund that, sell another bond at a lower rate, we could do that. We'll have some options in the future.
Thank you.
Yep. So I'm not sure if the mayor's available or not right now. It says he might have fallen offline. So Newell, we'll give him a little couple. Yeah, he fell offline. So Newell, as the council president, I think it'd be appropriate if you wanted to take over and entertain a motion.
Anybody else have any questions?
That's how you get the
Yeah.
attention. You don't-
Administrator Krugel?
Sorry, Mayor Haig.
Sound's not working.
Can you hear me okay?
We did there. Yeah, you were kind of in and out a little bit. So, but we'll hand it. I was just saying, if you fall offline, that Councilmember Krogman, as the council president, would take over. But it sounds like you're back. Maybe.
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you right there.
Hello?
Yeah. Can you hear us, Mayor Haig?
I'm having some, my internet. Yeah, I can hear you, but it's broken up. My internet connection's coming and going. I'm going to go ahead and reboot. I'd like to pass control to our council president, Councilmember Krogman, until I can get this problem rectified.
Very good.
Councilmember Krogman?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I will preside at this point until you're able to come back. Are there any other slides that you want to show us, Jasper?
No. So the only thing we're looking at is just recommending that we consider that resolution R 2020-033, the revised version that we sent out, or I sent out this afternoon or late morning, for that bond sale to United Bankers Bank for the total principal amount of $5,590,000.
Thank you. At this point then, I would ask if one of the council members desires to make a motion that we adopt resolution R 2020-033, awarding a bond sale to United Bankers Bank for the total principal amount of $5,590,000.
I will so move.
Sullivan second.
Who was the principal mover, please? I'm not sure.
John
Is
Fowler.
Okay. Thank you, Johnny. All right. Any discussion, any further discussion, any other questions? City Administrator Krugel, if you would please take the vote for us.
Yes, sir. Council Member Favolis.
Aye.
Council Member Kirby.
Aye.
Council President Krogman.
Aye.
Council Member Schlueter.
Aye.
Council Member Sullivan.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. So we're good there. And Shannon, I don't think we need a super majority for that, but either way we have it. So
No, we do not.
okay, thank you.
Mr. City Administrator, let's move to the next item.
Yes, sir, President Krogman. The next item we have is the casat 36 improvement project memo of understanding. And what this is similar to the casat 22 project. This is a partnership with the county, and we want to basically outline some of the expectations with that partner in this project. One of the things that we're looking at doing is taking over casat 37 as kind of a swap with this, and that's the general intent in order to get this work done. Casat 37, if you're not aware, is 4th Street in that area. But we do have Corey Beanfang, the city engineer, on here to present this, along with David Teagues, the county highway engineer, if there are any questions related to the county. So with that, I'll turn it over to Corey to go over the presentation.
All right, thanks, Jasper. Good evening, Mr. Council President, members. So as Jasper mentioned, we're talking tonight about County State Aid Highway 36, which is South Main Street, beginning at the city limits and extending north end of Ferry Street, as well as then Ferry Street from South Main Street to South 4th Street. So as you see there on the right-hand side of your screen, the pink identified project area. And how we got here is earlier this year, in early summer, we were putting a lot of effort towards the adoption of a 10-year street and utility plan, that capital improvement plan. And this figure is actually right out of that plan. And we identified casat 36 as a tentative 2022 project. And then shortly thereafter, city staff reached out to council and kind of asked for permission and as a means of transparency that we are going to begin discussions to scope this project with the county. Since that time, we've been going back and forth to develop this final memo of understanding that we have before you tonight, and that's what we're going to be reviewing. The memo of understanding could be equated to similarly the cost participation policy that we executed as part of casat 22. This one has a few more terms that are outside of just cost. So that's the reason for using this memo of understanding terminology, but it's really solidifying the responsibilities of the city and county, mapping that out so both agencies are aware and understanding of essentially the terms of that memo of understanding. If you don't mind, Jasper. So within that memo of understanding, it's the acknowledgement that it's intended to be the full reconstruction of casat 36. So that would include all utilities. For the sake of this, it'd be the sanitary, the water, the storm. We're also would be looking at the electric, and then a full roadway surface improvement or reconstruction. As you might recall, we did some emergency slip lining on casat 36 here the early part of this summer. And for those that maybe recall, there's been discussions about 36 previously over a decade ago, and things just didn't align to reconstruct that time. So the need's been there, and it's getting more critical with each year. And so that's the reason for it being identified as the next project up in the CIP, very infrastructure driven. And the cost breakdown, which is also acknowledged in the memo of understanding, is very similar to casat 22, as Jasper noted. So it's county covering all project costs, both construction and design, with the exception of the sanitary and water, which are always understood to be local responsibility, and then a percentage of the storm sewer as allowed by state aid. Schedule-wise, to meet the intent of the CIP with a construction year of 2022, the memo of understanding would be acknowledging that design would happen then in 2021, targeting be early spring bid, very similar to casat 22. I think we saw prices that were favorable because of that. So we'd be looking at a February, March bid of 22. That would be ideal, and then entering into construction in 2022. I think different than the 22 project, I think we'd be looking at one season, one construction year for South Main or for casat 36. Preliminary cost estimates, we've got this project around the $6 million total. And then we've also went ahead and tried to do a county city split, excuse me. And I think you see what we're estimating there. A little over or right around 60%, I guess it would be, of county, and then your city split coming in there about 40%. So, you don't mind, Jasper? So then an important part of the discussion with the county as part of the development of this memo of understanding was an acknowledgement of some of the recent jurisdictional changes in relation to the big turnback project. Transitioning Minnesota's, Highway 112 now to what we're all referring to as casat 22. The county came forward and was admitting that there's now 3 routes north-south that are feeding traffic that are designated as county roads in the city. And so an important part of this was a reassessment and an acknowledging of a redundancy in that county system. And I think most notably it's an acknowledgement that casat 37 really isn't that one that fits anymore. And it's also it was identified in the county transportation plan as a part of the turnback project with Minnesota State, with MnDOT 112, is that this would be considered, and this is a suitable transfer then from county to city. And so one of the important things with the county was a consideration of the turnback at casat 37 as part of this. That investment in 36, continued investment of county dollars in the city, but then looking to be mindful of those total county road miles as well. And so the memo of understanding identifies a turnback of casat 37. The proposed execution of that would be in year 2021. And then just to speak to it, casat 37 is identified in the adopted 10-year CIP. It's towards the end of the 10-year period, but that would be identified or has been identified as need of improvement as well. The turnback would be acceptance of that street as is. And the preliminary estimate for that project is around the $5.5 million mark. If you don't mind, Jasper. So then just a quick note on the 10-year CIP, casat 36, as I shared in that pink there, that's identified for 2022. And an admittance that there's some planning for this and an understanding that casat 37 had the likelihood of becoming a local city street. You'll notice in the CIP, we actually have it broken out with a portion, the south half being done a little bit earlier in year 2025, and then the north half being done in 2027. Really to be the next project after the south half. And that's just to be a little bit more mindful of a local reconstruction kind of ideology where you're trying to do it with the neighborhoods, utilities flowing to other utilities. And so just an admittance there that we were, understanding likely that it wasn't going to be one big county road project when the time came to look at, casat 37 or what would just be Bridge, 4th and 5th Street here potentially. And if you don't mind, Jasper. So tonight before you is that memo of understanding that would officially initiate the reconstruction of casat 36. And as we're identifying, that's an infrastructure-driven project from failure of utilities and roadways, and really will complete the loop within the city. With the recent work done on Kingsway and the efforts that have been made here on 112, the turn back to 22. There's notably a portion here, certainly by City Hall and Ferry and South Main that's remaining. And so this is really completing the rest of that loop in that county grid. The project scope and timeline is consistent to what we've been talking about and identified in our 10-year CIP. So it's really successful implementation of really the next project up. And as part of that, and when partnership with the county, it's acknowledgement of their request of looking at casat 37 as becoming a local city street. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or any other discussion that you may have on it.
Council members, do you have any questions for our city engineer or for the city administrator?
This is Councilmember Schlueter.
Go ahead.
Is there going to be anything that's unusual about the infrastructure in this street that we should be aware of?
It's a good question, Councilmember Schlueter. I would say from a roadway improvement standpoint, I think it's going to be very similar to 22. I think we're gonna be looking at some roadway narrowing element, notably there at South Main. There's a pretty wide section, so I think we're going to be looking really critically at that. You know, we've identified the priority of a trail network, and so I think we're going to be very much looking at either a continuation or some sort of, you know, component provided county support and participation in allowing that, realizing that's a city cost, that upgrade. But I think we'll be looking, you know, really critically at a trail along South Main. And then from a utility standpoint, I wouldn't say anything atypical or you know, not expected. There will be some extension of new mains as part of this project. So folks that are familiar or, you know, knowledgeable of the area, at the end of South Main Street, we don't have full availability of sanitary sewer and water. So we have some septic systems, and so I think we're going to be looking, you know, really critically at making sure we can serve all properties within city limits. Certainly a project of this side and magnitude allows you to make those main extensions and really design for that full service area. That's likely going to mean a lift station potentially. So I wouldn't say something atypical. We have obviously a number in town already, but that would be something new for sure. And then you know, a critical look at storm sewer. We have a river outlet that resides in Ferry Street west of South Main, so we'll be looking at that and making sure, you know, that's suitable for the life expectancy of the rest of the utilities draining to it. So.
Right, thank you.
I do have a question. This is Krogman speaking. How does the mall and the opening up of Main Street affect any of what we have here for either of these currently CSAH type roads? Is that part of the plan, or do we just assume that will all work out? How do we do that?
President Krogman, I can answer that. Corey can talk more about how the utilities will all tie in. But with the mall project and the opening of Main Street, the idea is that project will be designed this winter. It'll go out to bid late winter in 2020 or beginning of 2021, maybe in the spring of 2021 for construction in the summer of 2021. So that'll be a completely separate project from this. That road will remain a local road, so it won't be controlled by the county. The county road will still go around kind of the block that the mall resides on, and that parking lot that the mall owners now own. But really the utilities in that section, that one block section that we're reopening will be replaced as well. And with the South Main project, those will be tied in to those. So it'll be all coordinated, but the opening of Main Street will happen next year. We're planning.
And then the intersection, though, for example, of Ferry and Main, is that covered by this memo, or will that be covered by future?
By this project, Councilmember Krogman. So I think we'll have to be a little bit strategic on exactly what that utility design looks like. I wouldn't say we have that solved yet. Notably realizing that utilities make connections within middle of intersections. So we'll have to be mindful of that, and there will probably be some temporary work done, understanding that there's a year gap between the two projects. But from a true roadway footprint and project limit standpoint, South Main Street is really from the north side of Ferry to the south side of Bridge, with this 36 project handling that intersection, and you know, really the greatest extent of the other three legs. So.
Thank you very much. Council members, anybody else have any questions or comments? Mr. City Administrator, I don't believe the mayor has been able to, yes, he's back.
I am back, and thank you, President Krogman, for taking care of me while I was out there with technical issues. I had to reboot my entire system, so I apologize for that. So I'm assuming everybody had a chance to go ahead and voice any of their concerns or questions, and our city engineer was able to go ahead and answer everything that anybody had a concern about. So I guess we're at that point now where we're looking to take action. Am I correct, President Krogman?
You are, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so that being said, I'll entertain a motion then for our city council to approve the memo of understanding related to the casat 36 improvement project.
Schleter, so moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Schluter. Thank you, Councilmember Fablis. Any final questions or concerns before we take this to a vote? Administrator Krugel, if you'd be kind enough to go ahead and do the roll call vote for the approval of the memo of understanding related to the casat 36 improvement project.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Favalis.
Aye.
Councilmember Kirby.
Aye.
Councilmember Krogman.
Aye.
Councilmember Schleter.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Aye.
And Mayor Hague.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We now move on to agenda item 6, Charlie, certified delinquent utility and accounts receivable accounts. Administrator Krugel.
Thank you, Mayor Hague, members of City Council. Before you tonight is a summary of what we have left as far as our delinquent utility accounts and accounts receivable accounts. If you remember, back in October 12th, we held a public hearing related to those delinquent utility accounts. The initial amount was $375,000 and $375,708. By the time we had the meeting, and that notice was sent out at the end of September, by the time we had the public hearing, that number was $252,523. The current amount that we had as of today that's being requested to be certified is $194,782. So what we do with this, what happens with this is that this is put on, if we do certify, put on the property tax roll of that property owner. There were questions about that I received about rental properties, and the landlord is responsible for that. We hope that the landlord can have tenants that pay their rent, pay their utility bills. Technically speaking, the utilities are always in the landlord's name. The tenant just is an added person to that account. So all landlords have access. They're actually the primary account holder for all those utility bills. So they have access to go on, they receive the bills, they can go online and look at the bills if they choose. So, this amount, roughly, I don't know the number off the top of my head, what we certified last year, but I believe it was less. I believe it was around $130,000. So it's up from last year. That may be COVID related. We don't know, but we do know there are some programs that we have enrolled in recently that I'll talk about. The HeatWise program through the Minnesota Valley Action Council. That was something that we enrolled in early in the COVID crisis that we're in, and that offers some assistance to people that have some income issues. Also, with our new utility billing software, we're able to offer budget billing. What that does is normalizes the utility bill payment over 12 months so that you're not fluctuating from season to season. And also we have the ability to do payment plans. So we do have quite a few people that have enrolled in either one of those three options, possibly even more than one of those, to assist with paying their utility bills. So tonight, what we're looking for is just consideration to approve resolution R 2020-034, the certification of delinquent utility accounts. So with that, I'll entertain any questions City Council may have, and we do have Finance Director Dowd as well to answer any questions.
Can I have one point of clarification quickly of what Jasper had mentioned before we get moving? Last year's delinquent utility accounts were $330,000. They were significantly higher than they were this year.
Really?
Yep.
Thank you.
My bad. I was way off on that. Sorry. I was going off memory, but obviously that wasn't accurate. So thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
Well, That being said, Administrator Krugel and Director Dowd, first off, great job on getting that number from where we were when we started this project to where we are now. Even though that number's still too high, it's rather alarming. Getting back to the rental properties, mostly like for apartments, the apartment complexes. I just want to make sure that I understand this process now. So it's going to be the actual apartment that will actually have this put onto their tax record. It's up to the apartment owner then to go after the individual for any delinquent account, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, because I think we had probably about, what, 40% of these properties were rentals, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yeah. So when we sent letters out at the beginning or middle of September this year, when we got them out, the one copy went to the renter and one copy went to the landlord, so that they both were aware of the process of what we were going to do moving forward. So we sent out more letters than we had actually delinquent accounts. I think we sent like 400 letters, or maybe 450 letters, we owned like 300 and some accounts.
well, Director Dowd, I guess this question would probably be utilizing your expertise. I had several questions regarding our existing process that we put into effect back in 2015 with the previous council putting this on our books, and of course this council continuing with this. In your expertise and your past experiences that you've had with other city governments, what could we as a city council do moving forward? What's your recommendation as far as moving forward? Because quite frankly, 5 years plus seems to be an awful long time to recoup this money.
Yeah, so there's essentially 3 ways to do, business like this in utilities. One is to do nothing. It's not a very good option because you end up with people who never pay their utility bills, which is not an option in my head, but it is an option, I guess, in total. Not one I would recommend. The second one is this process here, which what we do, the special assessment process. It's pretty good. We get 95% collections, just because over time people eventually will pay theirs before they go into tax forfeiture. We haven't had too many properties go all the way that far, go that full 5 years before they don't pay anything, but we still do have some stragglers. I think on the books from the last time I looked, I think we still had some 2016 delinquent utilities that we had still out there, but it was very, very small, like 3-4 grand, something like that. Very, very small though. The last thing is that disconnects. It's always the quickest way to get people to pay, just because they can't use their utility after we disconnect them. I know that the cold weather rule will affect the electric portion of that at times, but at no point does it affect the water. So we'll have to figure that out and kind of go forward with city council how we want to move forward. What I've dealt with most communities is they've done either the certification process, if they don't have very many. This city has quite a few. That's, obviously we have 4 different utilities that we are, or the 4 main utilities, and then refuse is another one that we have with a third-party contractor. But the disconnect process would be much quicker, because if you can disconnect them after 45 days of no payment, then you only have 45 days of past due bill before you're disconnected. Although cold weather rule would take effect at some point.
Right. I appreciate that explanation. And I think our other members of council certainly do too, because quite frankly, none of us are experts when it comes to this. And, the more knowledge we can have, the better. Now, getting to the actual tax record, say you have an apartment complex with, let's say 50 units, for example. Let's say you have 10 of those units that are not paying. Now, is that a cumulative sum that now shows up on that PID at the county level? And what happens at the county level now? When they get their taxes now for 2021, will that number that's basically in arrears or a lien, I guess is another way I could call it, right? Is that due immediately in 2021, or is that something that stays out on the books until the property is sold or until it goes into foreclosure?
So the answer to your first question, they are all rolled into one PID, because that is one PID at the county level. So the county will get multiple. So they take our listing, say it has apartment A and C and Z. They will add all of those 3 and add them onto one PID as one amount on that PID. And then after that, it is immediately put on their books for 2021. and is payable within 1 year at a 6% interest rate. If they do not pay after that, they do not get charged any additional interest rate, but it does stay on their books. So then they would go into tax forfeiture, say they did not pay that for 5 years, that property would be considered in tax forfeiture. Now, in 4 years, if they make one payment, that 5 years restarts. From what my understanding with the county is in that process, is that they make one payment and then that payment goes, 5 years back, and it gets that the furthest back amount, then they're not in arrears anymore and they're technically current, and then they can do it again, so.
Thank you so much for that explanation. Council members, any questions for either Director Dowd or Administrator Krugel regarding 6 Charlie, our certification of our delinquent utility accounts?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Schluter.
go ahead.
Go ahead,
Scott.
Councilmember Krogman. Oh,
Oh,
Councilmember Schluter?
Go ahead.
This first part is for Director Dowd. What is an average customer's monthly utility bill? And are these bills that are delinquent, are they unusual in any aspect? Are they using a lot more water, electricity, or anything else that's causing them to be so high?
So for the ones that you're seeing noted that are extremely high, I'll answer the second question first, because that is exactly what you're thinking, is that those customers really have no regard into what they're using. Now we have a new system that has leaks, and we'll send off leak notifications to residents if they have any, if our water meters are giving us any leak notifications and stuff. And some of them just go unanswered. Some of the highest ones we have in town are just people who don't really care about their utility bills and how much they cost. They just never pay them, and then they get assessed to them. So they're much higher than an average bill. If I had to do an average bill for a resident in town, I would say somewhere between $230 and $240 a month. Somewhere in there is an average bill. That's like a 96-gallon container for refuse, 5,000 gallons of water a month, 600 kilowatt hours of electricity, and then stormwater. So somewhere between $230 and $240. So if you multiply that by 12, you're somewhere around $3,000 total for the year if you didn't pay a bill at all, just short of $3,000 bucks. So, but there are some people on this list that seriously have no way to pay it. They may be really, really conscious and use very, very minimal amounts of usages, and they just have no way to pay with, whether it's a job thing or it could be multiple things going on. So there really are some people out there that just can't pay, unfortunately.
I was just wondering if there might be some unusual circumstances with some of these, that maybe we should have some type of program to go into some of these places to find out why so much is being used. Maybe they really aren't. Maybe there is a problem at some of these properties.
Yeah, after so many months, so our system will provide us any anomalies that happen on a high-low basis, on a monthly basis. But if if they have a consistent usage that's high every month, eventually it won't be considered a high-low anymore. It'll be just the average. So that kind of goes away. We do, like I said, we do notify residents if they do have leaks that aren't being noticed by our meters. They have, the meters that are smart enough to know that this leak or this amount of water usage consistently is a leak. And I know we've been working with one resident recently that has had a huge leak over the past years, and now they're finally getting it taken care of, which is good for both sides. So then we don't have to pay to treat it on both ends, and they're not paying to have it flushed to their house. So.
Thank you.
Councilmember Krogman, I believe you had something as well.
I do. I would suggest that we have to deal with the policy that we currently have in effect and move to taking consideration of this motion. However, I think that next year, perhaps at our council retreat, maybe at a work session, we need to look at this whole area one more time. We've had some great conversation this evening. People have had a lot of questions, but we're not going to solve it because we have a motion before us that requires that we do one thing or the other so that we can get this process in gear, so to speak. So I'll leave it at that. I just want to make that observation.
Thank you,
Mayor Hague.
Councilmember Krogman. I also wanted to ask Director Dow, just to be clear, the books are zeroed out each year, correct? So this,
No.
what we're seeing, this is not accumulative from years in the past. This is just currently 2020.
So the cutoff year for this process and the number of days of notification happens to be July 31st of every year. So if you did not pay your bill from July 31st of 2019 through July 31st of 2020, that would get then assessed in 2021. Just
Gotcha.
based on days of notification, anything that's 30 days arrears, 30 days past due, as of September 1st is what we use. So technically at the end of the year, you could have 6 months of usages already that have not been paid, if that makes sense.
Understood. Understood, yes. Anybody else have anything? I think Administrator Krugel, you had something?
Yes, Mayor Hague, members of the council. If you remember, we've discussed this in previous years, and we did have intentions of talking about the policy, possibly revising the policy this year. Really talking about, do we want to go down the path of doing disconnects again? But because of the pandemic and the general guidance that we've received to not do disconnects during the pandemic from like our utility providers, the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission, we kind of put that on hold. And I think it's a good idea to have that during the retreat and possibly have it developed next year to be, to at least give it a good look and see if we do want to change it. So we did have intentions of doing it this year, but because of the pandemic, we postponed that. But next year might be a good year to do it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything? I'll entertain a motion then to approve Resolution Romeo 2020-034 for the recommendation to certify the delinquent utility accounts in the total amount of $194,781.50 to Sueur County for collection in 2020.
Sullivan, so moved.
Councilmember Sullivan, thank you. Can I get a second, please? Who was that? No, Councilmember Fabulous. Thank you, Councilmember Fabulous. Any final discussion before we take this to a vote? Seeing none, Administrator Krugel, if you'd be kind enough to do the roll call vote for approving Resolution Romeo 2020-034 for the recommendation to certify the delinquent utility accounts in the total amount of $194,781.50 to Sueur County for collection in 2020.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Fabulous.
Aye.
Councilmember Kirby.
Aye.
Councilmember Krogman.
Aye.
Councilmember Schleter.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Aye.
And Mayor Hague.
Aye. Next item on the docket is 6 Delta, the 2021 final budget review. Administrator Krugel.
Mayor Hague, members of City Council, the intent of this item is to review the work the Personnel and Budget Committee has done, staff has done to get us from the preliminary levy to the final levy potentially on December 14th. Also, what we've been doing in the between that period of time is developing the utility fund budgets along with the rates related to those. So what we want to do tonight is kind of do a practice run of the budget, review it. You could think of this as a work session. So, speak freely, talk to us about what you think is going on, what you'd like to see with the budget. But really, looking at the levy, we're going to have, we had a goal of getting our levy down to 0%. We're pretty close. I think the final, what we're proposing is 0.36% increase. So very minimal. The talk about the indoor pool, we've had that a few times during City Council as well. We have developed those numbers as far as, if we want to open up the indoor pool, this is what it would take as far as a levy increase. So we have these options. What we really want to do is try to anticipate any questions that you may have on the 14th that we can work through, either through the council member directly or through the Personnel and Budget Committee. If we have to meet again, we can do that. But really what we want to do is just make sure that we're ready for that truth and taxation hearing that we have on December 14th that's been noticed. One thing I will note about that is it's a little different this year, as a lot of things are. And we'll be holding that public hearing virtually through GoToWebinar. We're going to do a series of social media, website posts, things of that nature to make sure people have that link to be able to get into the meeting if they do want to participate in that public comment. So again, challenging to get people to participate in general, and even more challenging to get people to participate during a pandemic. So with that, I'll hand this over to Director Dowd. He's got a presentation for this review, and we'll go over it. And as I mentioned before, feel free to ask questions as we go through it. Kind of use this as a kind of a work session to go over the final budget. So with that, I'll turn it over to Director Dowd.
Welcome back, Director Dowd, and thank you so much for getting the Personnel and Budget Committee through this exercise this past 3 or 4 months. It was a lot of work.
I thought you were going to say it was a lot of fun. Thank you very much, Mayor, members of City Council, and City Administrator Krugel. If you have any questions, let's stop and talk about them as they go through. I'm going to go through each individual utility fund first. Then I'll talk about taxes, because the taxes aren't going to change this much or that much, but it will be a discussion at that point. And then we'll go through CIP, CEP last. So in kind of a summary where we're at today, the Personnel Budget Committee officially kicked off the budget process on May 26th. So it's about a 6-month process to get to where we're at today. The Personnel Budget Committee has met 15 times in 2020, reviewing and making recommendations to the budget. The City Council approved an 8.01% preliminary levy increase, which equates to about a 5.74% tax rate increase for 2021. That total of dollar amount there is around 260-ish thousand, or take that back, $210,000. Sorry about that. Addition of the major considerations and major changes this year, and again, is that addition of that Highway 169 abatement fund that's been discussed multiple times since we have discovered it. There's additional debt related to some equipment leases that we did in 2019 that we now have to pay for in 2021 moving forward. Some accurate numbers. We actually have some good data to use for the community center. This has been a huge push for this council and also for myself, is to make sure that we have good data for each service area. I can thank Public Services Director Rich Kuchera on here, and then City Administrator Krugel, and also the Community Center Manager Allison Watkins, and being key helps in key players in getting that good information to us on each service area of the community center and those costs related to those things. And then also had some changes in personnel based on changes in operations and just overall fit here at the city. We need to make sure that everything's going in the right direction and staying in the same area and making sure we're good to go. So changes in personnel have been a consideration as well. Next slide, please. Perfect. We'll start with the water rates. We'll look at essential water first. That's everyone's line that has water service within the city. You may have a non-essential meter as well. We'll talk about that next. So we're looking at roughly a 40-cent increase for most customers. That 5/8 inch is also a 3/4 inch size. They're the same meter size technically in the system. 5/8 are really older models or so, but most of them are 3/4 now. But about 40 cents for the service charge for those things. Again, it's about 94 cents if you have a 1-inch meter. The big change, or it's a pretty small change too, is for the tiered rates. It's about 7 cents more per 1,000 gallons. It was $3.25 for the lowest one. For the 0 to 10,000, which is where most of our residents are going to be at. People who have more than that are typically doing something else or have another, have a league or something like that, and we get it figured out with that point. But 383 for the next tier, 434. The one thing we did add this year, or we're looking to add as staff recommendations to City Council, is a super high usage tier, anything 100,000 gallons and more. And the reason for that is because we have The reason why we're having water issues and talking about the water things next year, like a water tower remodel or new water towers, new wells and stuff, is because of these high users. And the reason why we have to do these is because of the high users. So we need to be able to recoup some of the money from those high users is the reason why we're doing those projects. Those are obviously tentative projects, and depending on, if we can get funding and so on and so forth. But at this point, we're having to do those projects because of those high users, and we're looking at adding another tier for those 100,000 and up. I've never seen a residential customer even come close to 100,000, so it's not going to affect 95% of this city.
If I may, Zach,
Yes.
overall, I believe that this is a 2% increase across the board with the additional tier. So I don't know if you could summarize that as far as that rate increase goes, but for each one, water's 2%.
Sure.
And we'll do, and there's a summary at the end here that shows what the overall bill impact is for a average residential customer. So we can go for that too. But in general, the water rates, we're proposing a 2% increase.
Correct. Sorry, I should have mentioned that to begin with. Thank you. If none of the questions, we'll go to the next slide. Okay, the next one is the non-essential water meters, which is the meters that are maybe used for outside sprinklers or outside systems. Look at about a 10 cent increase for the smallest meter or most meters within town. And then also adding that fourth tier again on the non-essentials for 100,000 and up. Again, this is a 2% increase in rates from last year. So it was at $5 for the first 20,000 gallons at a non-essential meter. Now it's $5.10. Any questions on those? That's pretty much water in a nutshell. So any questions on water overall? Okay, move on to wastewater. This one's seeing about a I'm just going to preface it, seeing about a 7.8% increase. This was brought to us by we also did that when we did that wastewater study done by Shannon Sweeney, who was done earlier from David Drone and Associates. He had brought this to our attention that he did a water, wastewater, and stormwater basically analysis for rates and a study to make sure that we're covering our costs and making sure that we have a correct increase for each of these areas. That's where these rate increases are coming from. Also working with PBC, especially with wastewater rates. It seems to be the one that we can play with the most. It came up that a 7.8% increase is planned for this next year. That equates to about $1.95 or $2, pretty close for most residents in town. And also that flat rate increases $1 per 1,000 gallons. So this year was $12.85. Next year will be $13.85 per 1,000 gallons. That's a 7.8% increase again on rates from 2020 to 2021. Any questions on those?
And I'll just add a couple things if it's okay, Mayor Haag and Council. One thing that we ran into this year with revenues with our wastewater system is that our revenues are down significantly. So what we've used in our utility rate model that Shannon Sweeney helped develop is more conservative revenue numbers based on this year. So what we're hoping is we're going to look at this. We have the model. We're working with Shannon. We're going to look at it every year and make sure that our rates are adjusted accordingly to cover all of our costs. That fund has run in deficit pretty much every year since the wastewater treatment plant has been built. So, our goal is to be in a good position when that bond payment falls off to potentially, lower our rates at that point in time to a point where they're kind of what you see average regionally. But we have to get to that point, which is 7-8 years away. But really what we have is when we develop these utility rate plans, we have this model that we can look at every year and make recommendations to City Council, which is a good thing because it's more of a it's a model as opposed to us just looking at the rates and the revenues and the future expenses.
Correct. Not hearing any questions, we'll move on to electric. Electric, we're pretty much looking at a 3% across the board, based on recommendations that are coming from the DGR group that did our electric rate study. I know that the council has not seen that electric rate study. We're still ironing out some of the details of the information that we're getting from them. But what we're getting from them in closeness is somewhere around a 3% increase overall for electric rates. The increases on the electric rates are a little higher on the service charges because per DGR and what we're coming up with and what they're seeing is that our service rates are just, our base charges are too low for us to maintain our service lines that we have to each individual home, specifically, or not home, I should say, home and business in town here. Those service lines require larger increases, and our aging infrastructure within town is needed to be replaced sooner than they had originally anticipated. Not anything specific, but just overall our infrastructure in total. So they're looking at our service rates to be a little higher than a 3% increase. So that's why you're seeing, like, a residential one we'll look at in focus. That's a $2 increase per month on the service charge. Nothing astronomical, but it is something to be known that it is just a flat rate increase for the service charges for those residential customers. Otherwise, everything in town kind of went up a little bit, just like I said, based on that information from DGR. This is the service charge rates. I'll touch base on the rates, like the per kilowatt hour rates, in a second. Any questions on those at all? Okay, we're moving on, I guess. Jasper's getting antsy with me. Oh, no, go to the next one, that's fine. Okay, so the biggest change here that we're going to look at right away is the demand. So based on our demand that we're currently paying for from MMPA, we are normally a 10% buffer on top of that. Correct, Jasper? Or am I incorrect on that number?
That's generally, we had a year where for our large services for demand, when we did time of use, we were below what we were actually being charged. I think 2019 was a year that we were charging exactly what we had for demand. 2020, we added a 10% adder onto that to cover those additional costs related to the fund. So yeah, that 10% was added last year, but prior to that, we were below what we were actually being charged.
Correct.
For those demand charges.
Okay. Yep. And so coming from that, like as mentioned previously, that DGR is looking at these things in total demand and saying we're not charging nearly enough for our 10% on top of those rates in order to recoup our costs for demand. What demand is the fire of all things at one time. So what's our total demand for as a city? So if everyone in town turned their AC on at the exact same time, that would be the basic one pull of electric that we would have in town. So that's what the city ends up paying. And then we obviously charge to each individual business, because residentials and stuff are not on time of use and they're not on demand charges. But we charge those to businesses for all the startups of their machines and stuff. If they do that all at one time, that's a lot larger demand on our system, and that's going to cost more money for us. So those things that DGR is telling us is that we're not charging nearly enough, specifically in our off-peak times of October through May. So you'll see a larger increase there than you will in the summer months of June through September, as a 1659 to 1780 versus 979 to 1305. Again, this only affects our businesses, basically our biggest businesses in town, the agri-peers, the LSIs. We do not have Cambria on our electric service, so that one is not on ours. Although we give them water and sewer, we do not have electricity with them. But for most people, you're not going to see a whole lot of change in difference in residential kilowatt hours. You're at about 10 cents per kilowatt hour, or 10.2 cents per kilowatt hour. Next year, looking at about 10.5 cents per kilowatt hour. Everyone always talks about the franchise fee and the underground fee. Underground fee is obviously new, which are underground conversion that we're trying to do. And that's moving the overhead lines to underground. Much more stable. It's easier to get at. It's much more, just nowadays how it's easier to get into. Also, we have some areas that were already underground that were not done properly that we have to redo based on stuff that was done by previous administrations years and years and years ago. But the franchise fee and the underground fee are not changing in 2021. So 2020, we have the same franchise fee and the underground fee. Otherwise, small changes for everyone. Overall, just increases in kilowatt hours, looking at about a 3% change in kilowatt hours charged for 2021 versus 2020. Any changes on those service charges or usage rates? I'm not hearing any. Perfect. We'll move on. The next one, stormwater. So looking at stormwater here, again, this was done by Shannon Sweeney and David Drone and Associates during that study. 950 was our base rate in 2020. We're looking at 1045 for 2021. It's about $1.90 or 95-cent change. For most people, it'll be less than that. However, because the max acreage, it's based on a ref number or a half acre times by the base rate times by, there's a factor there. What am I missing, Jasper? There's a number I'm missing. Half times by the rate.
Yep. So it's you adopt the base rate every year, which this year was 950. We're proposing 1050. I'm trying to remember the formula too. It's
it's like 0.25 or something like that, or I can't remember. There's a ref number that we have that will get you to that 784. So it's technically not a 90 or a 95-cent increase for everybody. For most people, it's probably more like that 713 to 784, which is about 71 cents.
Yeah.
Again, this is following the plan with stormwater. Stormwater is what's paying for that casat 22 project. Next year in 2022, because we adopted it, we passed that and approved that sale today. The first payment of that the casat 22 bond will be done in 2/1 of 2022. So this stormwater was adopted in 2017. 2018 was the first year of collection, and that fund was developed in order for us not to have to increase tax levy for these kind of projects, knowing that these projects were coming down the line. This is exactly what the stormwater fund will be able to do. It's about a $90,000 per year amount of payment that we make from the stormwater fund that will be completely funded through these stormwater base rates and not affect tax levy whatsoever. So it is doing exactly what it's planned to do. It will also cover the 36 project, which we had the memo of understanding tonight. That will cover those stormwater costs as well related to that project. So again, not affecting tax levy for doing a street project is a huge thing for this city because we have a lot of bonded debt already, and we don't want to have any more tax burden if we don't have to. So.
Yeah. And I'll add, I just looked up to confirm the equation that we use for this, but there's a residential equivalency factor that for a property between 0 acres and 0.5 acres is 0.5, and then there's 5 different tiers, with the highest being a property that has 3 acres or larger, and they're at 0.25. So the formula is that residential equivalency factor, you multiply it by the base rate, which is what 950 this year, and then you times it by the max acreage for that tier, which is either 0.5, 1, 2, 3, and 10. So there's a formula, but really what we're looking at is the base rate that we adjust every year.
Correct. Any question on the stormwater? Yes.
Quick question for you in regards to stormwater. Could you update council in regards to the percentage of the PIDs that are now currently in the billing system, and what more do we have to do to identify the rest of the PIDs that are not in the billing system?
Sure. This has been an ongoing project since I've been hired here in 2019 to get this thing figured out. So I take this one fully on my shoulders. I've gone through about half of our entire PIDs and verified that all of them have been added, confirmed, or added them since then. So I would say we are at probably 85 to 90% of full completion in the city of implementing everybody in the billing system. When I got here, I would say we were at about 70%. So we had people who were not in the billing system. In short, what happened was we put everyone in the billing system on the old system, put everyone in there as a new account, and put them into stormwater. However, the old system added them twice and put them in as an additional account, and then they also added it to their regular bill that they had gotten for every other service in town. Since this stormwater utility was new in 2018, we had to add it either to everyone's bill or add a new account. And at that time, we added it to everyone's new account. However, then it added it twice. So we had to basically just eliminate those one accounts that we had so that we weren't billing people twice for it. We thought that was the better option than not billing them at all. And then that's been a process of mine since being consulting finance director to now being the full-time finance director, is to get this thing implemented all the way so that everyone in town is paying what they should be paying for stormwater utility. I probably got more questions the last couple months just because I'm starting to actually implement these and put people on who have not been paying stormwater utility for years, and they're like, what the heck is this all of a sudden? So I would say 85 to 90% to answer your question.
What kind of annual amount does that represent for this 10 to 15% that are currently not identified in the billing system?
The 10 to 15% that we're missing, we're probably missing about $20,000 to $30,000, somewhere in there. I would say 20 to 30 is probably a pretty good estimate. We were billing about 130. We should be billing about 175-ish. So we were missing about 45 at the beginning of this year. I've implemented I've done about half of the utility accounts. I've added quite a few that we're not paying before. So I've probably caught 10 to 15,000, maybe 20 at the most. But for the year, it does add up quite a bit, especially when you get multiple residents or multiple properties in town that don't have any other utilities in town. They just have a piece of property, that's it. So,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Any other questions? I'm not hearing any. We can move on to refuse. I'll have Jasper take this one because he's the one who's been negotiating the waste management contract.
Yeah, thanks, Finance Director Dowd. So we are in the midst of negotiating this. So I did get rates that because we're going to have them provide the service, and them as being waste management in 2021. So what I had them do is just develop what the rates are that they're going to charge us, and go from there and work out the details of the actual contract, probably in the beginning of 2021. But what you can see is that the base charges generally went down a little bit for most of the services, the different container sizes, but the recycling fee went up pretty significantly. And you may be aware there's an issue of refuse haulers getting rid of the recycling that they do pick up now. So you'll see that. So overall, you'll see a little increase, but pretty level across the board for the refuse. So more to come with that, but I thought it was important that we get the actual rates so that we can compare the whole bill for these. So yeah, not much of an increase. They're pretty level as far as it goes for your normal. Most people have either a 64 or 96 gallon, and that's going up 2%. So more to come with the contract, but we did get what they're going to charge us in 2021 for those base rates. But we're not proposing any increase in any of the admin fees. Those are going to stay the same, and the tax is the tax, based on that total amount. So there will be more to come with the refuse contract. Again, I'm working through them. There's some things that I think we want to try to get, but they will be our hauler in 2021, and likely beginning of 2021 we'll have a contract with them, a longer term, probably 7-year contract again.
Jasper, this is Noel. Why don't you go ahead and mention a little bit more about recycling, not just the factor of the cost or how much they're having difficulty getting rid of it, but talk about our ability as citizens to be able to get recycling in the community. You're working on a number of bins that are available, for example.
Yep. Yeah. So we're working with Waste Management along with the county. This is kind of a multi-partnership deal to have community recycling stations, areas that you can bring recycling. The county has interest in this. They actually have a refuse initiative that they've started implementing. La Center has some stations that residents and people that don't live in town can come and bring recycling. One of the ideas that we're looking at doing is a cardboard recycling station that you can bring cardboard in, and then also have that cardboard recycled at a cost that is reinvested in the community. So whatever Waste Management would get for that cardboard. Different service organizations can sign up for that. So you're kind of bringing your cardboard into a central location, and then, a service organization like Lions or Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts or Girl Scouts or whatever it is, they'll be able to get something out of it. So working on some of those details, but we really want to make sure that it's accessible to everybody in town. You might get a situation like Christmas where you have a bunch of boxes or a bunch of recyclable paper and you just don't have enough room in your bin. We want a convenient location where you can bring that and make it convenient. The other thing I'll mention just about the contract while we're talking about it is the electronics recycling. A lot has changed since 7 years ago. We have a lot more disposable electronics. So we really have seen a increase in people wanting to use that service, which is at the street department right now. You can go in there, I believe, on Wednesdays, drop off equipment, and then it gets recycled. But we run out of those boxes. I think we have 1 or 2 boxes that we get from them, Waste Management, for the contract to recycle these electronics, and we end up buying, I think, 4 for ourselves out of our cost. And the idea behind that is, well, we want them to recycle the electronics because a lot of times, and this isn't right, people will just dispose of them in a ditch or somewhere around town, and we end up picking it up anyway. So there's a couple things that we're working on, and yeah, like I said, more to come early in 2021.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we'll go on to the next one. This is going to be a full bill, I believe, is the next slide. Yep, so this is an overall utility bill. I did go back 2 years just to give us some more baseline information of the increases we would have saw from 2019 to 2020. Knowing past information sometimes is good to know for future information. So total bill in 2 years ago in 2019, or last year would be in total, $226.75. Again, that's 5,000 gallons of water and sewer, 96 gallon refuse, and electric at 600 kilowatt hours. And your stormwater is the lowest one of the half acre or less. 233.86 was what you would have saw in 2020, and then 246.38 is what you're going to see in 2021 with these proposed utility rates. Again, the biggest changes are the sewer at that 7.8% change. We've seen the water at 2%, electric's around 5% for this one, specific because a $2 service charge is higher than a 3% just straight rate increase. $2 is, I think, right around 25% or something like that. But again, it's total dollar amount is what we're looking at as well, along with rate increase percentages. So $12.52 per month. If you multiply that by 12, you're right around $150 for the year, maybe a little less. Any questions overall? I'm not hearing any. Well, that's a good thing, hopefully. We don't need any action again on this. This is just a discussion point. So move on to the tax levy. Again, we started off with 8.01% as a reminder. We're looking at a 0.3% tax levy change, or $9,500 for the 2021 proposed budget. Again, the biggest thing is that Highway 169 abatement of $170,000. That's 100% return on our money if we put it in. So we figured it's best to put it in and we can get something done on the top of the hill for a project related to the city. That is 100% city-owned dollars if we do a project up there, but it is 100% return on our money. If we put enough money in, we get 100% return on our money. So basically, we double our money for putting the same amount of money. Putting $1 million in, we get $2 million in return. Just as a quick side note for those things. Otherwise, it's pretty even from last year to this year. The one thing that we're going to talk about is the indoor pool and opening that up. I know that it was mentioned by City Administrator Krugel or alluded to it. The cost of those things is about 5.01% levy increase. So that would be on top of this 0.36%. That roughly equals about $75 per household, if I remember correctly, City Administrator Krugel. And that's $75 per year, correct?
That is correct. So yeah, if that 5.01%, comes out to, yeah, $625 per month or $75. So just to kind of put that in perspective, that's what, you know, an average household, I think a $206,000 median household value would see if we would choose that. It's a generally good to use that for like any sort of levy increase that we're looking at. And this year it's, you know, basically 0.36%. So, but yeah, we wanted to make sure, and those are the types of things, you know, that we want to be prepared for if there's questions on the 14th. You know, what would it cost to do this or that, or if we change this? You know, we hope to have all those things and all those questions answered from City Council, you know, prior to the meeting, so we can come prepared.
Correct. So right now, as it stands, this tax levy 0.36% is, if your house value did not change at all, which most houses in the city did not, it will be $3 more next year for your taxes in the city of Sueur for the city portion only. $3 would be the change over the year, or 25 cents a month, I believe what it is.
Have we gotten our numbers for what the county and also the ISD are going to be for 2021?
Not at the current moment, but I most certainly can reach out tomorrow to them to make sure I have that for the December 14th meeting if that is desired by the council.
I believe we all probably want that information so we know what the total impact's going to be between all three levels of taxation as well as our utility rate increase.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Crowe. Did get in the mail this week, citizens of Sueur, probably most of us, we did get the preliminary figures from the county, you know, getting us ready for the truth and taxation hearings. So there are figures available based on individual households or individual taxpayers. But Zach will have to give us the, you know, percentage increases, dollar increases, whatever it might be for average.
Correct.
But that again, that's based off the 8.01%, which is our preliminary number.
Right, but it also had the school district and the county.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is Administrator Krugel. Those, yeah, like us, those, the county, they set theirs high, you know, and they'll come down from that a little bit, I'm guessing, whatever their number was. So we can get those, what we think that or what they think their final levies will be, so we can kind of make a good comparison and a kind of a global look at what that impact is.
Yep. Mayor, this is Councilmember Sullivan.
Go ahead, Councilmember Sullivan.
Hey, Zach, when you were talking about that 5% increase, is that just to open the pool? It would go up 5%?
Yes.
That's just the pool, not any other part of the community center.
Yep. So in this budget would be everything else would be open in the community center. It would be the outdoor pool would be open for the 3 months that it typically is. However, the indoor pool would be shut down for the entire year, or, you know, for the year based on the budget. If we were to do a 5% increase on the levy, that would open up that indoor pool for 9 months of the year. It would be shut down still the 3 months that the outdoor pool is open. But yes, it would be just open the indoor pool. Everything else is open at the community center based on this budget.
Okay, do you know by chance what that actual dollar amount is for the community, for the pool?
I know City Administrator realized, I think it's around 130 some thousand.
Yep, correct, 132,000.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Not hearing any other questions. I did put a slide for tax impact if we did have questions on the average home and what you'd see for rate or annual increases in dollars based on this current 0.36% levy, just so you had something to visualize and look at. So if you have a $350,000 house in town, it's $7 for an increase. If you have anything less than $200,000, it's a $3 increase for the year, or about 25 cents a month. The next slide is going to be CIP CEP. So this is kind of the first look that the council's had at this. I know it's been a long time coming, but we've had a lot of changes and we've had a lot of management discussions and staff time looking at it, making sure we're happy with it before we want to give it to the council. So the main couple things are, We looked at the airport. We wanted to make sure everyone knows a local total when we're looking at things. Most of that stuff's covered by the FAA and also by the state percentages. So we wanted to look at, say, here's a local total of how much the actual cost of the city is going to be. Because you're looking at some projects going to $400,000 for a New Holland tractor. That's ridiculous for the airport. Our cost is really only $55,000 for all three of those projects next year. I think our cost is $20,000 for the local for the tractor. So we're pretty well heavily funded by FAA and the state, which we can be thankful for those things. But that $20,000 of local funding is just for the tractor itself, using that as an example. The big things that got added here, we're looking at the fire department. With the new fire chief coming on, he's taken a big role in looking at overall what the needs are for the fire department with equipment a lot closer and working with us a lot closer with those things, which has been great to be able to figure out where we're at with those equipment things. SCBAs is the first one we're looking at in 2021. It's a $200,000 replacement of SCBAs. I don't remember how old they are, but I know that they're way out of compliance. Do you remember how old they are, City Administrator Krugel?
Yes, I do, and they're on their 7th year, and this is the final year. They're compliant for 7 years, so this is the last year, so they should be replaced next year.
Okay. Sorry, I thought they were older than that. Must have been something other piece of equipment that I was looking at. Any other questions on these 5 areas? Like I said, those are the kind of the main big drivers next year in 2021. Again, these is just a preliminary planning document. Things can change. We still have to get everything approved by City Council if we actually want to do one of these projects. It's just something for us to plan for. And 2022 to 2025 is always a shot in the dark. We never know what's going to happen there, but try to focus on 2021 for now.
If I may, Mayor Hague, members of City Council, I'll talk a little bit about the fire department equipment replacement. So the pumper number 2 replacement that was brought to City Council, talked about at that level, and we actually put the order in for the chassis and the service body for that. You'll see that on 2022. You know, we put the order in 2021. We actually we're planning on selling an equipment certificate in 2021. We actually won't make a payment on that piece of equipment until 2022. So you'll see movement on that item, and then also the tanker may be new. I know we talked about it at the personnel and budget level. That was something that we applied for a FEMA grant to receive. We thought we had a pretty good chance of receiving it because our tanker truck is actually an old milk truck. Very unsafe to drive. There's only a few people on the fire department that can actually drive it safely. So that's being proposed to be replaced as well, and kind of combine that with that equipment certificate. We did talk to the fire commission about that as well, and they went and had an opportunity to look at that piece of equipment. I'm not sure if anybody from outside of the city went and looked at it, but they're familiar with it, and it's been around for quite some time. But really, we're looking at safety and functionality of these items, and that tanker replacement would again be proposed to be an equipment certificate in 2020, sell it in 2021, first payment 2022.
Okay, that's page 1. Go to page 2, I guess. This one's of our bigger areas, our public works and our recreation. There's only 2 different departments in this area. Looking at that street maintenance, annual street maintenance, $500,000 this year, ramping up $50,000 every single year. Again, big things they're looking in 2021 for public works is replacing basically a 1998 F-250, and there's another 93, I can't mean another piece of equipment, maybe a Ranger or something, and replacing them with 2 UTVs. I believe it was a 3-for-2 trade, if I remember correctly, Jasper, or there was 3 pieces of equipment that we were getting rid of to get those 2 UTVs.
Yep, I believe so. Well, I know there's 2 like actual vehicles. So yeah, it's a 98 F-250, and then that 93, you might see that driving around town watering flowers. But that's in pretty rough shape too. And what the proposal is to replace that with 2 UTVs, utility vehicles that'll be way more functional as far as removing snow, getting into smaller areas, things like that. So kind of using that, and our seasonals can use those too a little bit easier to do some of the work that they're doing. So yeah, looking to replace that equipment, that older equipment, with some UTVs that we'll be able to utilize, I think, better and more efficiently.
Correct. That 2008 Freightliner plow truck is something that we've mentioned before. It's right below Cedar Ridge Trails for 2021. It's like the first thing in 2022. In that listing there, that was something that the council has already approved for that. That's that plow truck that'll be added to that equipment certificate that Jasper had previously alluded to with the fire trucks, tanker and pumper. That plow truck is in rough shape, and we are getting out of it as soon as possible with a trade-in. So that has been approved by council already. Everything else at that point is, kind of, we're gonna plan for it. Tractor replacements, skid loaders, other things like those are just reaching their end of useful life, and we want to make sure we have good equipment for our staff to use and not old outdated stuff that costs more to repair than it does to just replace it.
Yep, and one thing I'll point out, I just got a message from Public Services Director Kuchera. There is a third vehicle that was replaced. It was a 2001 Ford F-150 too that we declared surplus, I think, this year. So there is actually, you're right, Zach, a 3-for-2 kind of swap. One thing I will also mention is that the 2008 Freightliner, it's not our oldest plow truck, but it's by far the one that we have the most issues with. And also that the totals, if you look at the streets and parks total, that one, that 240,000, that'll be an equipment certificate over probably 10 years. So you'll see a reduction in that total amount because it'll be spread out over the payment schedule.
Correct. Other things, we broke down the recreation by department and by service area. I wanted to look at each one of those. Again, most of these local shares are, we wanted to add in there too to make sure that we know what our local share is. Local share for the both hockey scoreboards, looking at a local share of $0. It's not going to cost anything. We just got to basically do the work. Local share for the acoustic panels, 5,000 of that 17.5. The other ones are small things. Again, the outdoor diving board and the outdoor pool bath floors, those have been on the project list for the last 2 years, I think, and they just keep getting pushed just based on funding and making sure we're being very budget conscious when we're looking at overall items for the community center. Knowing that all those costs are they add up quickly. So.
And then we also have the fitness equipment lease on there. Oh, yeah. As a reminder, that was a 3-year lease. After 2022, we will own all of that equipment, and that lease will fall off at that time.
Correct. Sorry, thank you very much. This will conclude the tax levy portion of things. This will be utility funds after this. We've kind of focused on looking at all the tax levy items first, CIP, CEP, and then we're looking at utility funds. As you can see in water, there's the 1 million gallon low zone water tower. And then well number 8, those two are in red because those will be bonded for. Again, contingent on funding, we're trying to use PFA, our Minnesota Public Facilities Authority, and their buying power of AAA. Again, we're an A+ and they're a AAA, so they're a few levels above us to get their buying power of a really low interest rate. Again, the main big projects, again, you could probably take of that $5.6 million total for 2021, you take 4.8 million off of it, you're at $800,000. And then that SCADA conversion phase 1 is $500,000. We can route that into our bond if we choose to. That's something we could do. At this point, we're looking at just paying cash for that from previous reserves in the water department. Again, everything else is pretty much driven by, again, Public Service Director Rich Kuchera and City Administrator Jasper Krugel and myself, just looking at overall our city and want to make sure that we are in the best thing for our buck here and doing the best possible job we can. So wastewater, we got a lot of equipment to replace, building C, building B. A lot of these things were maybe pushed off because of MRF-PUC. Councilor Fabulous can really administer to that one because a lot of things were pushed during the MRF-PUC era, which we got out of in 2020 here. So that's been great to be able to just get some projects done there without having to jump through hoops and go over ladders and drop down slides. So that's been great so far, and I continue to look forward to moving forward with the wastewater department. Last page, no questions. Electric's pretty simple. Maintenance improvement materials, basically underground conversion stuff, which we have a underground conversion fee for. Again, those may be smaller projects now, and then we'll do one big project in 2-3 years. So we're averaging $115,000 to try to store some money up in order for us to do that main project in 3-4 years. I don't remember how much it costs, but I know it's very expensive to go from overhead to underground. I don't know if you know that, City Administrator Krugel, off the top of your head.
It varies. It varies quite a bit depending on what's going on. But yeah, it's quite expensive. But long term, it's a good investment.
Correct. So total projects next year, 8.1 million. Again, that's not total costs. We're going to pay out $8.1 million because the city does not have that amount of money. Most of it's going to be bonded for projects. Otherwise, if no funding's there, then we will not be doing those, and we'll push them off into the next year.
One thing I will make note of is the SCBA's. They're actually 14 years old. I think I said 7, but they do have a life of 15 years, so they will be reaching end of life next year. So
okay. I thought they were older than 7 years, but I didn't want to correct.
Yep. Sure. Wrong again. Sorry about that.
I think there's one more slide. Just I think it's just a total thing or a summary, I believe.
Before you move on, the 2022 Main Street substation improvement, that's going to be something that's going to be bonded for, correct? And what exactly will that provide the city?
Yeah.
What does that do for us, administrator?
Yep. So I can talk about that, and yes, that would be a bonded project that we would sell a bond for. But really, our Main Street substation, the one that you see kind of behind where the old city offices were, where LS engineers are now. The equipment, the capacitors, transformers, all of that is at end of life. So they're looking at doing a complete replacement of that. We've limped that along for many years already, and really it needs to happen to maintain the electric system that we have right now. So, these electric items are very expensive, but we hope that, we're not doing them every year or every 5 years. It's something that, lasts 30 years, 15 to 20 years. I shouldn't say 30. This one's probably lasted 30 years. But it'll help us maintain more reliable electricity to our customers.
Anybody have any questions at all for our city administrator or our finance director regarding anything associated with CIP, CEP, anything associated with the budget, or anything associated with the rate increase or potential tax increase? As not seeing anybody, we'll go ahead and assume that everybody's good with what we're presenting then tonight regarding this. And we've now been at this now for 1 hour and 37 minutes, so I would like to go ahead and make a motion to go ahead and take a 5-minute recess before we move on to our public safety discussion and ultimately to our closed meeting portion of the meeting. So I'm making a motion for a 5-minute recess. Can I get a second, please?
This is Krogman, second.
Thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, gents, let's all be back here at 8:13, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's now 8:13. I'll entertain a motion to resume our city council meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Favalis.
Krogman,
Thank you,
second.
Councilmember Krogman. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our docket is 6 Echo. It's our public safety discussion, specifically speeding and nuisances. Administrator Krugel.
Mayor Hague, members of City Council, welcome back. Tonight, we're going to have, I'll call it a kind of a continuation of a conversation we had and a discussion we had at the 2020 City Council retreat. And if you remember, we had a series of meetings that we talked about various departments. And one thing we did talk about at that one back in March was speeding and how we manage speed. And then really talked about balanced policing and kind of what a day in the life of a Sueur police officer entails. So, we had a good conversation there, but I think it's healthy that we continue that conversation because it's obviously something that is important to City Council. It's important to us, and we want to make sure that we're providing the correct level of service to the community. So again, tonight I anticipate talking about balanced policing, speed management techniques, and then we're going to add the nuisance abatement process. So talk a little bit about that. So, and really this is coming from the Personnel and Budget Committee. They requested to have a continuation of this discussion. I do have Captain Aaron Tiki here available. He can chime in whenever there's a specific police related question that I might not have that intimate knowledge about, then he can definitely chime in. So we would just like staff would like to take time to have this discussion and make sure that we're meeting the expectations of the City Council related to these items. So the first thing I'll talk about is balanced policing. And one thing that you're going to start seeing that I kind of wish I would have had sent out sooner to every council member is the weekly media report. So our police records technician sends out a report weekly on all of the calls and things that we've done as a police department. And those go out to the Sueur County News, and I'm not even sure if they publish them or not, but they do have access to them. So, and it's something that's generated every week. So you'll start seeing that being sent out to you from Jenny Cummins weekly, and so you can kind of look and see what we've been up to, what kind of things are happening in Le Sueur that our police department's dealing with. So as with all small departments, I consider our department's a small department. We have 7 full-time officers if you include the police chief and the captain. So resources can be limited at times, and the tasks are prioritized. An example, and this is kind of an obvious example, I realize, is that an officer sitting at Kingsway, you've likely seen a police officer sitting in the fire hall parking lot running radar on that street, because we do write a lot of speeding tickets on Kingsway. And then there's a call for an industrial accident at one of our industries in town. That police officer that stops doing the radar and then goes to that immediate need industrial accident. So at any given time, there's 1 or 2 police officers on duty 24/7. That's what we strive to do, and we work in the part-time officers for that as well. So if you look at the graph, I think we're hearing Captain Tiki's his pager or something. So I'm gonna mute you here if you can't mute yourself. But you know, and I did include the graphic from the 2019 kind of cumulative numbers, and I'll talk about those numbers a little bit. But traffic stops are our most common incident that we do. It's our most common touch point with the public. You know, we're making a lot more, you know, of those. You know, you'll see the balance there, though. You know, traffic stop versus a burglary investigation. You know, there's a lot more time involved with the burglary and a lot of those other things. So, you know, there's a plethora of other items that make up all the other incidents that are included on that graph. So, you know, I guess what I want to emphasize is that these officers, they're out there, they're making these prioritization tasks daily. You know, immediately when they're needed, you know, trying to figure out what they're going to do. And really, you know, we're actively enforcing the speed limit, you know, if we're talking about speeding or we're using that as an example. But when there's one officer in town and there's something that happens that we get dispatched to, you know, obviously we're going to not be enforcing the speed or not running traffic, radar traffic. So, you know, in the paperwork portion of that, you know, with this, with all the reporting that's required, it does take up a lot of time as well. So, you know, you might do an investigation and then spend half a day, you know, writing up the reports. So those things are all challenges that we face every day at the Sueur Police Department. You know, the police officers, when they're driving around town, they have their radar on and they're running radar as they're driving around as well. You know, one of the biggest challenges is that when you see a police car or somebody that's speeding sees a police car, they're slowing down or they see other people slowing down. So there's that issue that we work with. But, you know, we have our prime areas that we really, we write a lot of tickets on, and we went over this before, and, you know, that's Kingsway, Ferry Street, Elmwood, South Main, Commerce, you know, those areas where you have people coming into town. You know, that's a common place where people, you know, do speed and are caught speeding. So, you know, back to the balance policing, you know, there's a lot of things that we ask of our police officers, speed enforcement being one of them. But there are things that will take precedence over those basic speed enforcement type things too. So, any questions, you know, about balance policing, and Aaron, Tiki, Captain Tiki, is there anything that you wanted to add that I missed or maybe didn't describe correctly?
Welcome, Captain Tiki. It's nice to have you with us tonight, sir.
I think he's, I'm not sure if he's still muted or not. Sorry.
Yeah, I believe he is.
I did see him, sorry. I did see him on there beforehand, and now it's asking, sorry for the technical difficulties, but is it asking you for an audio pin, Captain Tiki, at all? Because I can give that to you.
Oh, no.
Oh, yep, there you go.
Is.
You're good. You're good.
All
right.
I had to call with my phone. My computer's not working so well. So.
Yep, no, that happens.
Welcome, Captain Tiki. We're glad to have you with us tonight, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to be here. And I'm sorry, I lost about 2 minutes of audio before I got in here, so I'm not sure if there was a question that was asked or something I missed. You have to update me on the last couple minutes here.
No,
Jasper
Aaron,
was just giving us the brief on the balanced policing, and he wanted to know whether or not you want to add anything more to it.
Yeah, most of what I heard, Jasper covered it pretty well. You know, obviously we have a lot of other priorities in our police work that take priority over speeding, although we do take speeding very seriously and we do enforce it. Just keep in mind, as far as crimes go, speeding is a petty misdemeanor, meaning it's the lowest form of any offense that we deal with. So obviously anything that is a misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, felony, those things are going to take precedence over any speeding enforcement, just because you know, in a lot of those cases, we have victims that we need to vindicate, where there's people that are impacted that we're trying to support and you know, recover property or provide safe housing, things like that. And like Jasper mentioned, those investigations and incidents are very time consuming. And as a small department, our resources are very limited. So if our patrol officer is tied up on a lengthy investigation, like a child protection call, a call relating to the school, an assault, anything of that nature, you might be talking maybe an hour, 2 hours of dealing with that actual physical incident and being involved in it. But then you're looking at, 4 to 6 hours of report writing and paperwork that go along with that, which takes that officer off the street. And we only have 1 to 2 officers on duty at a time. So there are periods of time when because we're tied up with other duties, we aren't necessarily able to be on the street doing street enforcement because other things take precedence over that.
Administrator Krugel, a question for you that we might be able to do something about this, maybe not. Have we ever thought about the possibility of adding additional stop signs on our heavily trafficked roads like Kingsway, South Main, Commerce? I know, for example, where I'm at here on South Main, they're coming in, from south of town, and they are just, cruising. And many times, I mean, they're exceeding that speed of 30 miles an hour by the time they get to Risedorf, prior to ultimately slowing down by the time they get to Ferry right there to make the right turn. Can we put additional stop signs in? Now, I know that right now it's casat 36 is a county road right now, but ultimately it's going to be a road that's going to belong to the city of Sueur here before long. Next year, we'll start that process of transferring it from the county to the city. Once the city has ownership of a road, can the city elect to put additional stop signs in to deal with the speeding?
Yeah, so I can address that. And I just want to be clear, the South Main section is going to remain county. It's the Fourth Street area that we're proposing, or that the MOU talks about, to being turned back to the city. So the county will still have jurisdiction on that South Main, the casat 36 section, the one that wraps around the mall area. In those areas where it's a county road, the county would have the ultimate say in that. Generally speaking, they want people to get through those roads as quickly and as safely as they can. So likely you wouldn't have support from the county level or from the engineering side to meet those two goals by adding like a mid-block stop sign in the middle of a segment of road that doesn't have any stop signs on it right now. But there's various things that we are, and we'll get more into the speeding. That's the next section that I want to talk about, kind of the tools that we can use to do that. But it'd be a good conversation to have, and really, those sections are county, and we could make some, I don't know if they're recommendations or requests to the county if we want to do anything differently. But likely in those stretches, we wouldn't see, any support for like a stop sign, on that stretch.
Thank you.
Yep. So it sounds like if I think everybody understands, our police department does a really good job of balancing what's all going on at the city, and the fact that we're not talking about some of the other worst things that could be happening or are happening that are being taken care of, and we're focused on speeding. I think that speaks to what kind of job the department's doing, as far as handling some of those bigger ticket items that you sometimes see in the paper, big drug busts, other things that are happening in the community that we don't want. So, if we can focus on speeding, and that's the perceived issue that we're dealing with here, that's a testament to kind of what kind of job our police officers are doing. So I'll pop into speeding and just kind of what we have for some things going on with speed management techniques. Obviously we have the radar speed enforcement, the radar systems on the cars. That's basically when you see a cop sitting on the side of the road waiting there, they're checking for speeds. We have recently received a speed trailer through a grant through SHIP. You maybe have seen that out later on in the summer, early fall. So smaller unit, and we also have the larger unit that we partnered with the city of Cleveland on. So we actually have 2 speed trailers, and I think in 2021, what we're going to do is we're going to develop a schedule for those 2 and get them around town. Get them out more frequently. One of the things that I hear is, why don't we keep it out overnight or later into the day? And really, it's a logistical problem and kind of a fear of somebody vandalizing or stealing. That smaller trailer is something you could pick up, and a couple people could pick it up and throw it in the back of a truck, and then it's gone. So that's a concern that we have at the police department. And but I think we have access to 2 speed trailers. You're gonna start seeing those out in town more frequently. I'd like to develop a schedule where they're going to be placed so we can kind of organize it and know, because you generally see it. You'll see it on Ferry, you'll see it on Elmwood, you'll see it on the entrance into town off of 93. We have our key spots that we put it to remind people of the speed limit. So we do have that as an option. You have probably seen the new dynamic speed sign that was put up on Elmwood, south of town there, as you come in. And I sent a note to Corey last week to say, hey, I see it out there. Let's get the engineer, get the group to turn it on so it's actually registering speed. So I'm not sure if it's actually working right now or not, but it used to just, if you're going over 30. Oh, it is? Okay, good deal.
It's phone numbers now.
Yep. Okay, good deal. So that's good. That one's active. With the casat 22 project, there's also going to be a couple that are put on Ferry Street by the school, and then also we're going to have a couple on Kingsway Drive, not part of the casat 22 project, but it'll be probably installed by the same contractor, the same exact style of sign on Kingsway. And then the South Main Street, there'll be one proposed there. We're looking at doing one maybe on Commerce coming into town. It's a challenging location because we have some of those nice, beautiful trees on the west side of the road that kind of block the 30-mile-an-hour speed zone sign. Finding a way to better showcase that so people can kind of see it, I think will help with some of the speeding that we see in that issue. And then also we have, social media marketing campaigns. We've done this in the past and just, bringing up speeding as an awareness tool, using social media. There's various weeks and months that are dedicated to kind of speeding education within communities. So we use all those things. The biggest, I think, deterrent is enforcement and being in those areas. I think the police have a pretty good idea where speeding issues are, but there's issues that we need to know about. I know that personnel and budget was discussed that there's some local roads that there's some issues on, and I've passed that information along to the police department, and I mean they take that stuff seriously. So just some facts so far in 2020 as far as speeding citations and warnings go. We've issued 320, this is as of today, 320 citations for speeding throughout town and 545 warnings. As a note, when an officer issues a warning, it's recorded so that if that individual is pulled over again, that's available to that officer that's pulling them over. So, we're at, 865 so far. We'll probably be at 900, 950 for the year. That's three citations or warnings every day of the week that we're, pulling somebody over. So that's pretty good. Captain Tiki and I were talking about this, and that's pretty good. You think of three getting pulled over 3 times in town, or three just for speeding alone. This is just speeding. This isn't anything else like a broken tail light or stop sign violation or anything like that. These are just related to speeding. So basically 3 times a day an officer is pulling over somebody for speeding right now in the Sueur, and probably 1 out of those 3 issuing a citation, 2 out of those 3 issuing a warning. So those are up-to-date facts, a little bit about that. Are there any comments, questions, concerns, ideas about just the speed management techniques, how we're approaching it, some of the tools that we're currently using, and the tools that we're going to be using into the future? Just any general discussion, comments?
I would add, Jasper, that as we're enforcing these traffic stops and these speeding citations or warnings, or just stopping and making contact with somebody, we as a police department, we try to be reasonable in our enforcement, meaning it's a small community, and we need to work together with our community to continue to provide a safe community, both on the road and just in the community in general. And part of balanced policing is being fair. And I think one of the reasons we have such a good community support is because we are a fair police department. And what I mean by that is maybe we might give some warnings to people who are going 37, 38, 39 miles an hour. But when we're doing that, we're building trust and we're building relationships and we're making positive contacts with our community members. And when we encounter that same community member, maybe a day, a week, a month, 2 months later, and they're a witness at a bar fight, or they're a witness to a theft, that person is going to be much more likely to step forward and be a positive witness for us and support us and give us information than if we're running around writing petty misdemeanor violations for 37, 38 miles an hour and kind of making people upset with us or feeling like they've been wronged or being treated unfairly for a very minor violation. If we encounter that person a couple days later, a couple weeks later, they're going to be a lot less likely to cooperate with us or be a lot less forthcoming with information. So, those are the kinds of things we look at in a small town to police fairly and to deposit money into that bank so that when we need to make a withdrawal and get that information from somebody, they're more willing to give that to us when it matters a little bit more, maybe when we're investigating or enforcing something a little bit more serious than a petty misdemeanor.
Anybody have any questions for either Captain Tiki or Administrator Krugel regarding our speed management techniques? I think we're ready to move on, Administrator Krugel.
All right, moving on to nuisance procedures. So I want to just clarify a couple points here. So city code, there's a nuisance section. The enforcement of that section of the city code is handled by the police department. Now there's a city zoning code that you could have a zoning violation. Those are handled by the zoning administrator, and that's Samantha DiMaggio, the community development director. So some of the nuisance stuff gets confused with zoning violations and vice versa. I know that, we get things coming in through request tracker occasionally, and we divvy it up to whatever it is, if it's nuisance or zoning, and the various parties handle that. So the majority of nuisance cases are identified and handled internally. Now, I think that the conversation that we should have is, at what level could that be at? And I think the level is, it could be, there's definitely some nuisance violations out there. But, so far this year, and this is up to date as of today, there's been 160 nuisance letters sent out by the police department and investigated by the police department. There haven't been any cases this year that have made it to city council for abatement orders. We've had a couple that have been pretty close, but really what and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, what Bruce does is he really tries to get, if it's something needs to be cleaned up or moved or something like that. Like we don't want to bring it to council. We would rather resolve it internally.
Yeah. Our goal is education and compliance, not necessarily penalty or enforcement on the backside. Our goal is education, enforcement, and we try to work with the homeowners and property owners to get voluntary compliance is our goal on those nuisance ordinances.
Yeah, and so far, we haven't had to bring any to city council this year, which is good, but we have in the past, and I think everybody's aware of those. Of those 160, there's been 8 that have been initiated through the complaint process, through somebody calling in, saying, oh, so-and-so's got a bunch of junk in their front yard, can you guys look at it? So about 5% were initiated. So a lot of them are related to grass length and just basic upkeep of the front yard. I think what, our nuisance ordinance that we have allows you to, as long as it's in your backyard, you aren't as held accountable to what's in your backyard as what's in your front yard. So, in situations where there's a corner lot, we run into, well, this is my front yard, this is my backyard. And in that conversation, we generally say, well, just, make it better, clean it up. But really, I guess the point of this is we are, we've always said we're not actively really enforcing nuisances, but we, looking at this data that we're receiving, or that I'm receiving and you're receiving, is that we are, we're out there and our police officers are looking at these things as they're patrolling and sending notes to the police records technician, who then sends out the letter and says, get this taken care of. Otherwise, you're going to have to, go to city council and have an abatement hearing. So, this is the first time I think I've looked at it in this way, and it's kind of eye opening, and for me at least, to look at it. So, the nuisance process, that's something that we can look at as far as what we want to, hold the property owners accountable for. In my, I guess, my short time here, there's council members that have lived here for quite some time. But from when I started to where we're at right now, I feel, just my perception of the city seems like things are getting cleaner. People are taking better care of their yards, things like that. And I think they kind of, see that we are enforcing this, and we're sending these letters out, and, kind of holding them accountable to make sure that they're maintaining their property. Now, there's always going to be properties out there that, are going to be considered a nuisance, and, we want to deal with them, and we will as we identify them. But, we do rely on, the complaints, complaint-based investigations for these types of things. I know it's not the funnest thing to do, right? We don't, want to, you don't want to call in your neighbor, but, and it sometimes might be difficult to go have a conversation with your neighbor too, and say, well, geez, you need some help to clean up some of this stuff. I'm willing to help you, and, that type of thing, to initiate that conversation with your neighbor, to just kind of indicate, well, I'm not really okay with the way this looks, and it doesn't really meet the nuisance code of city council, or of the city of Sueur. So it's a challenging and sometimes awkward conversation to have, and in those cases, we can, the police department can definitely get involved and look at it and send a letter, and that type of thing. So it's really this delicate thing that we try to balance. But I guess in my opinion, I've looked at it, and it appears people are tending to take better care of their their properties, and it might be a product of people seeing that the city is taking care of roads maybe a little bit better and investing in roads, and they're kind of seeing that by the city. So I'm not exactly sure, but it from my observations, it looks like it's getting better in the areas that there was maybe some concerns 3-4 years ago. So I wanted to just open it up and allow anybody to talk about nuisances and how we handle the procedures related to that. If there's any we can do a detailed analysis or just review of the nuisance code at some point in time in the future, if there's maybe a code related change that you'd like to see. One thing I will mention that if we do ramp up enforcement for something like nuisances, there's a cost there. It's more time possibly of our police officers. If we're talking about a community service officer or something like that that's out there, writing or identifying the issues. The one thing I'll note is that identifying them is about 5% of the actual work that goes into enforcing the code. It's mostly administrative and taking pictures, documenting it, sending the letter, following up, bringing it to council. That part is the more difficult part than identifying it and just starting that initial just kind of process. So it would require, if we wanted to increase that enforcement, I guess it's probably some additional personnel resources that we would have to talk about. So I don't know if anything I missed, Captain Tiki, that you wanted to add as far as procedures go, or if there's any questions from City Council.
Yeah, that's about how we deal with those nuisances. Is we locate them, we send them the notification. They have 14 days to correct the issue. Most of them are cleared up within a day or two, and they have to bring their letter back down to the police department for us to sign off on it, and we go back and check their property, make sure that the issue has been corrected. If the 14 days goes by and we don't hear from them, then we have to go back to the address where the violation is taking place, try to meet up with the property owner and and walk through their property with them if they're willing to do that, to point out specific issues, even though they're already aware of the issues when we point them out, you know, and offer suggestions and ways they can clean them up. And like Jasper said, again, that it can be very time consuming if you have people that aren't willing to comply at the first notice of a letter. Very seldom does it get to the point where we're issuing a citation or somebody for counsel, but the few instances where that did happen, in previous years, you know, I think those property owners, a lot of them were property owners that didn't live in the city of Sueur, and they had renters or tenants that were abusing nuisance ordinances and not cleaning the properties up. And once the actual property owners were brought to the property to be shown the problem, and the ordinances were explained to them, and that as them as the owners could be held responsible for the nuisances, then we usually get compliance once that takes place. But again, that some of that takes time and officers off the street to complete.
Anybody have any questions for Captain Tiki or Administrator Krugel regarding anything to do with the nuisance procedures?
Yeah, this is Councilmember Krogman.
Head Councilor.
I have to confess, I haven't been riding my bicycle since it got cold out, but as I rode around the city, I noted there are a lot of people parking cars and trailers on their grass, on their lawns, not on driveways. Obviously, that's a violation of our nuisance regulations. I'm wondering if we need to have some kind of a campaign to let people, literally let them know that that's not proper. I think people do it just not knowing any better. And I'm wondering what we could do to have some kind of a social media, city newsletter, all kinds of different ways of approaching, letting people know that they need to keep their property clean, that they can't have junk sitting in their front yard. The cars and trailers, boats don't belong on the grass in the front. I'm just wondering that out loud, and I'll leave it at that, but I think I'm trying to plant a seed there if I could. So that's one thought. Go ahead.
I can respond to that real quick. I would agree with you, Councilman Krogman, that our number one nuisance violation is vehicles parked on the grass, or a boat trailer or snowmobile trailer parked on the grass in the front yard. We also do have some homeowners that, you know, that's their daily parking space. So they park there, then they move and disappear, and we think, oh, maybe it's been taken care of. And then, you know, 2 days later, they park back there again. So it's hard for us to stay on top of an issue like that, because vehicles are moving. They're not always being parked in the exact same spot, and they come and go. And we do try to address those as fast as we can. But, you know, we have done some pretty effective social media campaigns in the past for other issues that have gotten, you know, a lot of views and a lot of attention. I do think what you're bringing up would be a really intelligent way to reach a lot of people. And you're right. I think a lot of that violation comes from property owners just not realizing that what they're doing is a violation of the ordinance, and they're not aware of that.
And, you know, in some of my other work in life, my occupations, I've learned that sometimes you have to tell people 7 different times, 7 different ways. And so I'm suggesting that we consider some kind of campaign on this. Maybe campaign sounds too harsh, but some kind of a public relations effort to let people know. I'll leave it at that. I just want to plant that seed. I want to go back real quickly to one other thing. And by the way, I'll stop. I also appreciate your pointing out that identifying the problem with nuisance properties, for example, is only about 5% of the problem. The rest of it is all the work that goes into trying to get people to comply. And I think we as a council need to consider that and whatever. I want to go back to speeding real quickly and suggest, and I'm not criticizing the police department. For all I know, you're actually doing this where the tickets are written. I frankly happen to live on a street where children are left out, a bus is stopped to leave children off to go to school. And when those buses are there, people are very compliant with stopping and whatever, but other times they're just whipping down the street. And it strikes me that some of our, I'll call them secondary roads, we need to look at those every now and then, just to let people know that we care, that they not speed there to protect the children. I'll share a personal story. When I was a child, about 8 years old, I was playing on the side of the road and ran out a little and actually got hit by a car. Believe it or not, I was in front of the doctor's office when it happened in our neighborhood in Chicago. And I basically suffered some, bruises and a, little rib, a little bit of hurt in my ribs. But children are going to do that. And when people are going down the street at 35, 40 miles an hour, we're risking the lives and the health of our children. So I'm suggesting that we, every now and then, as you said, the presence there is what makes a difference. And if they see us doing that, they may slow down every now and then a little more. I'm done speaking. I appreciate the opportunity to just share those ideas.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I can speak to that a little bit too. We do, when we're out doing our patrols, we're just not randomly driving around, willy-nilly with no plan in our head. We have goal-oriented patrols where we're patrolling certain areas at specific times because those are the areas that we have received multiple complaints on, or maybe we have a slightly higher crash rate, or we know when the buses are letting the kids out or picking them up. So, for instance, school patrol has always been a very important thing for us. And if you're anywhere near the schools, are between 7:30 and 8:30 in the morning, 11 to 12:30 in the middle of the day, or 2:30 to 3:30, we're patrolling those neighborhoods. I mean, like moths to a flame. We're all over those neighborhoods, and we have a pretty zero tolerance policy for violations that occur in those specific zones at those specific times, just because of what you said, Councilman Krogman, about so many children being in the vicinity of those areas. So we're very cognizant of that, and we are patrolling those secondary streets, especially at those times, because that's, again, where we see a lot of that foot traffic with the kids walking to and from school and getting on and off the bus. But I also would like to point out the fact that, our accident rates are very low in town, because I think the majority of motorists are doing a good job in town because we do actively enforce, and the majority of the motorists in town also have families and children that live and walk and use the same roads and sidewalks and trails that you guys do. So they're pretty cognizant of it. But we do have, just like any community has, people that will speed simply because they can.
Yep.
Anybody else have anything for Captain Tiki or Administrator Krugel regarding the nuisances or anything else associated with anything we discussed regarding public safety tonight? I don't see anybody, but I would like to ask a question. Have you noticed an uptick in the number of noise complaints regarding vehicles, specifically pickups and, loud mufflers and that type of thing? You've been getting some complaints on that?
We haven't really gotten any complaints, but that is one. We do actively enforce vehicle noise laws. And actually, I do a driver's ed presentation for every driver's ed education class that goes through the Sueur Henderson High School. I do a presentation for both the parents and for the kids that are going through the driver's ed class. I cover various topics in that presentation, from equipment violations to drugs and alcohol crashes and statistics and things like that. But I do hit really heavy on those equipment issues, because we do have a core group of people that have lifted or elevated vehicles that have bumpers that are in violation of the Minnesota state statute, which is 25 inches, or the tires stick out too wide past the fenders, or else, they have loud exhaust. And we do enforce that. It's as we come across it, we enforce it as we're able. The state statute doesn't really define a decibel level as what's a violation and what isn't. It just requires that every motor vehicle have a muffler in working condition that doesn't emit any loud or popping or cracking sounds from the exhaust. So it kind of comes down to just the reasonableness of what the officer is observing and hearing. So yeah, that is one thing that we do address and we do cite for it, typically because it, you know, they're younger people that are operating those vehicles that are louder, that always don't have the means to fix them. We'll usually issue them like a fix-it ticket that gives them 30 days to fix the issue. And if they don't fix the issue, then they can get an actual citation, and then they're having to pay the citation plus fix the issue. So I wouldn't say that there's been an increase in it. I think that has always been an issue in town, just because we're in a rural area and young people, you know, they're kind of attracted to some of those louder trucks, louder vehicles. And we also have a fair amount of motorcycle traffic that goes through town that can be loud. And we deal with it as it comes up and try to be as proactive as we can with the noise, vehicle noise enforcement. Because we understand, just like everybody else does, when you live in a high traffic area, the last thing you want to hear is that loud engine noise going to and from in front of your house all day, every day. And I do understand that that's an issue and an aggravation, and we do look for it and enforce.
And I guess I also want to say that regarding Councilmember Krogman's comments earlier, regarding how we might be able to get the message out, our utility bills go out to all of our homeowners and businesses every month. Maybe it might be a good place to put a reminder in there what is allowed in regards to the yards, like you cannot park vehicles on your grass. You know, maybe something like that might be a way to get a hold of everybody in a really quick period of time. Just a thought. Anybody else have any questions or concerns for Captain Takey or Administrator Krugel regarding the public safety?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilmember Pavlos.
See, the new speed sign that flashes here on Elmwood, South Elmwood Avenue, does that record any information at all, or is it just flash for people to watch their speed?
I believe, unless Jasper, you have other information than I do, those dynamic speed signs just display the speed. They don't record anything or do any type of surveying. But both of the speed trailers that we own, both the one that we own jointly with Cleveland and the one that we just acquired through that grant, they both have the ability to capture and record data.
Okay, does it make sense or not make sense that we're not, now that the street is open and connected all the way through past 115, why aren't we checking the data? Why don't we have a trailer out while it's not snowing and icing and everything, while people are getting used to the road? Why aren't we setting up a trailer to see?
Yeah, you know, we when the weather was nicer, we were having it out, and it was out, and then we had that snowstorm in October, and I think that kind of made us draw back because of that brand new speed trailer. We didn't want to have it covered in ice and salt and get all damaged and worn out because of that. But if the weather is good, we certainly can get that speed trailer out and start doing that at least for the next, you know, several weeks while the weather holds. It's just been some logistic issues in the last few weeks. We are swapping out we received our new squad car. We're swapping out an old squad car, so we've been short a squad car. This new one that we just got has the trailer tow package on it, and it's not quite in service yet. So we need to wait for that squad car to get up and operating so that we can start towing that trailer around with our squad car that has the tow ability on it. Otherwise, we had been hauling those speed trailers around with our personal vehicles, and it's not. We don't always have an officer on duty that has a personal vehicle that can tow that trailer. They don't. Not all of our officers go up with a tow hitch on their car. So that's been kind of the issue too.
Yeah. Well, I greatly appreciate and understand that. I also know that we're making decisions as a city council based with more data than we've ever had, and that's how we're doing so much of our decision making. Is following this data, whether it's from the community center, if it's from tracking nuisance things and so on, all of this information, including our budget numbers, come down to the additional data. And the more data that we have, the easier it is for us to have these discussions. So when we have a project like this, I think it's really important that we get as much data collected as we can, knowing the what's going to be happening in the future with discussions.
Yeah, and this is Jasper as well, and Corey's on here as well, but I believe that sign actually does collect data.
Yeah, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, sorry, Jasper. So it is, Officer Tiki. There's two different options. The data collection is an optional feature, and one that we are specifying on these speed signs. So we'll have ability to be able to download vehicle count, average speed, speed recorded in excess of the posted speed. So again, I think some context in the availability of that data, but being able to review that and and make some assumptions and generalizations from it will definitely be available with all these speed signs that we're proposing to put up.
Very good. Thank you very much.
I would guess that the next city council is going to be having to deal with some repeat business that this city council could not finish regarding Elmwood. And that being said, it probably behooves us to get as much information as we can, because I think we all heard when we were going through the Elmwood discussions in the past that safety, speeding, things of that nature were a huge concern on Elmwood. I think if we had the council member Fabulous's point regarding the data, if we had the data, then we certainly have something that we could go ahead and address the community with. So I think that's a great idea. Anybody else? Well, on behalf of the entire city council, we'd like to thank you, Captain Tiki, for your time to participate with us tonight and give us an education again on things that were important to us regarding public safety. So thank you very much for your time, sir.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Okay. So we now come to our comments, reports, items of appreciation. Let's start off with Council Member Sullivan tonight.
Mayor Egg, I got nothing tonight.
Okay, thank you, Council Member Sullivan. Council Member Krogman.
Yes, let me give you a quick report, and perhaps Councilmember Schlueter will want to chime in also. We both were able to attend the Greater Minnesota Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities fall meeting last week. I will point out that the results of that, good summaries and some actual recordings of sessions and PowerPoints, are provided in the in-brief that was mailed to all of you by email probably today, I think is when I received it. I'll give you a couple of highlights. A gentleman from the U.S. Federal Reserve came. He's the director of outreach in this region, and pointed out the economic situation in our general area, but keeping in mind that we're Region 9, which includes Minnesota, South Dakota, or North Dakota, and a large area. Just a quick note of something that you may tweak your interest. In the construction area right now, we're finding that the supplies of doing construction, the cost of them is going up and up. We're also finding that there's a shortage of construction workers, and therefore there's now an increased wage pressure because there's fewer people that are in the business working, therefore they can demand more as salaries. I mention that because we want to keep our eye on things like this as we talk about future projects for the city, because some of the things that we do involve people in those trades. I'm not going to give you any detail on it. If you want to look at that CGMC, initials for the coalition, look at the newsletter. There's his whole presentation. His name is Joe Mann. The other thing that was talked about was COVID and the economic recovery associated with it. And related to that, the question of whether or not local government aid, LGA, will be available in the future. Everybody on the call, we had different people from the legislatures, both the the House of the Representatives and the Senators, and they were all different parties, different, Democrat, Republican, and they were all very nice to each other and very pleasant. But they're still going to have to fight out what they're going to do about all these things. And it looks like LGA probably next year will be okay in 2021, but stand by for 2022 because that's when the rubber will meet the road. So the point made was we need all of us on the council, and perhaps as a council, need to be in communication with our senator and representative and other senators and representatives at times to be lobbying for and helping them understand why we need LGA and how we need money for economic recovery to support our businesses in our town and our city. So I mentioned that. It's not a call to action right now, but I think we need to keep it on our radar that we're going to be very proactive about speaking for our citizens and having a strong voice. I'm looking at my notes. I think I'll stop there and point out also, however, that the coalition, CGMC, is going to be advocating for us very strongly. And I think it would be appropriate for all of us to follow carefully what they're doing so that we know when it's our turn to speak up or when it's their turn to advocate, if you want to use the other word, lobby on our behalf. So I'll stop there. I appreciate the opportunity to give you a quick update on what happened. Most of that information is available through the CGMC website and their newsletter. I wasn't down from all of what was said, but I think we're going to be facing some challenges where we need to be very proactive. I'll end there. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Krogman. And this email that you're referring to, I'm checking my city website right now, and I do not see that email. So if by chance we might be able to get our city administrator to send that out to us, because if I don't have it, I'm guessing you guys don't have it either. You said this was sent out today, Councilmember Krogman?
I believe it was, yes. I'll check right now.
Okay.
I'm sure it was.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the update. Councilmember Favalis.
I don't have anything new to report. Essentially, what I know is what I'm seeing, and the sidewalks and the trail. Since put in most of it here on Elmwood Avenue, it gets used a lot. See a lot of people, a lot of kids riding bikes, walking. It seems to be well worth our efforts, and I continue to hear great things about it. That being said, that's what I got.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Kirby?
I'll be real brief. Last Tuesday, I had a Sueur Henderson Community Ed meeting that went well. It's kind of the same talk, challenges we have ahead of us trying to, meet as far as run different programs and things with the COVID going on. So a lot of online and streaming type stuff. I have a hospital board meeting tomorrow at 3. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of information at that meeting also about COVID numbers in the county. And just on a last and quick note, I want to remind everybody that Thursday is the annual Rotary Turkey Trot. So if you don't have anything to do, work up a good appetite at 8 in the morning, go over to the community center and get registered. There's I think a little extra fee to register late, but it looks like Thursday is going to be the nicest day of the week. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Kirby.
Councilmember Krogman, let me quickly indicate
Councilmember Krogman.
That event now, because of COVID and the restrictions that we have, the regulations that are in place, it will be entirely virtual. People can show up for it on Thursday morning, but there will be no groups that walk together, large groups of people. But between 7:30 and 9, there'll be people there handing out we call them swag bags or gift bags, or running the stuff that you would get otherwise. And people are welcome to walk then or anytime at their convenience, but we just can't do it as a group. So I thought I'd point that out to everybody. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Schluter.
To expound on what Councilmember Krogman was saying, we had 4 people talking about funding, and they tried to be pretty rosy about what's going to be happening in the first half of the biennium, but they had some dire concerns about what the cities are going to be funded in the second half of the biennium. They also did indicate that schools could see delays in payments in the first half of the biennium. So we may see some problems with that. And I did get that email this afternoon also that Newell talked about. That's all I have.
I just got it now too at 9:06. Thank you, Administrator Krugel. Okay, I don't have anything. I think we've pretty much talked about everything at the council level. Any of our directors that are online would like to say anything final for the evening? Before we pass it on to Administrator Krugel?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, how about you, Engineer Bang Fang? Anything, sir?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Well, Administrator Krugel, the hammer is yours, as usual.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Hague, members of council. I'm just going to talk briefly about just operations at City Hall. Obviously, we're being impacted by COVID-19, and we've moved to be open by appointment only. So if you do need some assistance, we ask you call, email, try to resolve any issues or questions that you might have over the phone or through the computer. If you do need to come in, we are open by appointment only. We do have a pretty thin staff right now at City Hall. Anticipate that'll get better here in the next week or two. But I just ask for your patience and know that we do care about the residents, and we'll do our best to get back as soon as we can. But we, like everybody, or like a lot of people, we are having some challenges right now related to the pandemic. So if all else fails, you can email me. Various emails, my regular email, jkrugel@cityoflesueur.com, or the generic info@cityoflesueur.com, that I also get that one too. So ask for your patience and as we deal with this, and we'll come out of this stronger. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to kind of go through what we're going to be doing next. I'm going to be asking for a motion for adjournment, but just a reminder, we will adjourn, we'll go offline, and then we're going to be going into our closed portion of the meeting, and we'll all have to basically go through the process like we did earlier today to get back in. But with that said, before we do that, it is now 9:11. Why don't we all be back at 9:16 and we can reconvene the meeting for the closed portion. So that gives us a 5-minute break. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. For adjournment, yes.
Mr. Mayor, do you want adjournment or recess?
Well, you know what? It would be a recess because adjournment would be final. Good point. Entertain a motion for recess for 5 minutes.
So move.
That was Councilmember Favalis. Okay. Is there a second?
Krogman, second.
Thank you, Councilmember Krogman. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll see you guys at 9:16. Go ahead and log off and we'll come back in at 9:16.